I left home 7 years ago with $200. My family told everyone I was unstable. Last week, my sister Googled my name and called mom screaming. Within 24 hours, I had 43 voicemails. Not one said sorry. 43 voicemails in 24 hours. I want you to understand the specific math of that before I tell you anything else. 43 calls in 24 hours means my family, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, collectively decided to pick up their phones and dial my number an average of once every 33 minutes, around the clock, for an entire day. Not one of those voicemails said, "I'm sorry." Not one said, "Are you okay?" Not one said, "We were wrong about you." Every single one said the same 2 words, "Help me." I listened to all 43 of them on a Tuesday morning in March, sitting at my desk on the 14th floor of the Hale & Associates building in Portland, Oregon, with a view of the Willamette River and a calendar that showed a speaking engagement in Ridgewood, Ohio in 4 days. I listened to each voicemail in full. My mother's voice, my father's voice, my sister's voice, cycling through variations of the same 2 words in different registers of urgency, moving from surprise to desperate to something that tried to approximate humble and didn't quite get there. Then I put my phone face down on my desk. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the event page for the Ridgewood Community Development Fundraiser, Building Tomorrow Together, March 15th, Community Center on Maple Street. Keynote speaker, Selena Lawson, COO, Hale & Associates. And I thought about my grandmother's handwriting on a piece of paper I had found at the bottom of a wooden box, 5 years into a life I had built from nothing, that said, "If you're reading this, it means you had the courage to leave." Good. I straightened my jacket. I had a speech to finish writing. Let me tell you about Thanksgiving. Not the holiday, not the food or the table or the ceremony of it. Let me tell you about the specific moment that ended the first 30 years of my life and began the rest of it. I had been living at home for 2 years after college, not because I couldn't manage independently, but because my mother had what I would later understand was a gift for making leaving feel like abandonment. She had a vocabulary for it. "The family needs you here. Your father's not well. It's not the right time." She said these things the way someone builds a fence, one plank at a time, until one day you look up and realize the fence is complete and you're on the inside of it. The education fund was my grandmother's, $12,000, earmarked for me specifically. My name on the account, my grandmother's handwriting on the accompanying instructions. She had set up a matching fund for my sister and had been clear in the documentation that both amounts were separate and protected. I was 23 when I found out there was documentation. My grandmother mentioned it once quietly at a birthday dinner, the way she mentioned things she wanted to make sure I heard, directly, without ceremony, the way she did everything. "There's money for you," she said. "When you need it, it's yours." She died 8 months later. For 2 years after her death, I asked about the fund occasionally, gently. Not because I needed the money urgently, but because it was mine and I was aware of it, and I wanted to understand how to access it when the time came. My mother changed the subject every time. At Thanksgiving dinner, 2 years after my grandmother died, with 15 relatives at the table and the specific social weight of an extended family gathering pressing down on everything, I asked clearly, "Mom, can we talk about the education fund? I want to understand the process for accessing it." My mother set down her coffee cup. She looked around the table. She smiled. "See," she said, "this is what I've been dealing with. She's been acting erratic for months. 15 people, 15 pairs of eyes." My father stared at the carpet. My sister scrolled her phone. My brother crossed his arms. Not one of them asked if I was okay. I sat at that table for 45 seconds after my mother said it. I know it was 45 seconds because I counted them, because I needed something to hold on to while my brain processed what had just happened. And then I excused myself, went upstairs, took the suitcase from my closet, packed the things that mattered, and came back downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen. I said, "I'm leaving." She said, "You're being dramatic." I said nothing else. I closed the front door gently. I had considered slamming it. I chose gently because I knew it would be the last time, and I wanted the last thing I left behind to be the sound of someone who had already made her decision and was at peace with it. I had $200 in my wallet and a bus ticket to Portland in my phone and my grandmother's wooden box under my arm, still sealed because I wasn't ready to open it yet. I did not look back. By the following Sunday, my mother had told the women's ministry at Ridgewood First Baptist that I was receiving care at a residential treatment facility. I know this because a woman named Mrs. Patricia Halloran, who had taught Sunday school when I was 9 and who, to her credit, had always found my mother difficult, sent me a card 3 weeks after I left. The card said, "I don't know what Diane is telling people, but I want you to know I'm thinking of you." No address for me to write back to, but she had tried. My brother posted on Facebook 8 days after I left. Some people would rather run than grow up. "You can't fix everyone." 47 likes, 14 comments, most of them from people who had known me my whole life and were nodding along to a story about me they had no independent evidence for. I saw it because I checked his profile once, 2 weeks in, from an internet cafe in Portland, when I was between shifts at the hotel front desk where I'd gotten a job the 3rd day I arrived. I looked at the post for about 60 seconds. Then I closed the browser and went back to work. I didn't check again. The first year was not easy in the way that movies about starting over make starting over look. There's no montage, no sympathetic landlord, no moment where everything clicks into place over a single inspiring song. There was a hotel front desk job that paid $14.50 an hour and required me to smile at strangers for 8 hours at a time. There was a student studio apartment with one window that faced a brick wall and a bathroom where the hot water took 6 minutes to arrive. There were night classes at Portland Community College in business administration, paid for out of my paycheck, 2 nights a week after shifts. There was the wooden box from my grandmother on the shelf above the bathroom mirror, still sealed. I built slowly. Front desk to assistant manager to operations coordinator at a mid-size property management firm. Night classes finished, certification earned. Operations coordinator to operations manager. An introduction, through a colleague, to Margaret Walsh, founder of Hale & Associates, 20 years in community development consulting, the kind of leader who hired for instinct and taught everything else. Margaret had interviewed me for 45 minutes and then said, "You have the operational mind of someone who learned it under pressure instead of in a classroom. That's rarer than the degree." She offered me a director role. I negotiated for senior director. She laughed and said yes. That was 4 years ago. I opened my grandmother's wooden box in year 5. Inside, a letter, folded twice, her handwriting on the outside, for Selena when she's ready. I sat on my apartment floor, a different apartment by then, with windows that faced an actual street, and I read it. "If you're reading this, it means you had the courage to leave. Good. I watched your mother for 30 years, and I know what staying costs. Don't hold this family together at the cost of yourself. You don't owe anyone your life. Use the fund for whatever you need. It's yours. It has always been yours." There was a postscript. "I should tell you that I asked your aunt to verify the fund 6 months before I got sick. Your mother had already accessed both accounts. She forged your signature on the withdrawal authorization. Your fund and your sister's fund both went to Meredith. I'm sorry I didn't catch it sooner. I'm telling you now so you know, and so you can decide what to do with knowing. The decision is yours." I held the letter for a long time. $12,000, my name on the account, my grandmother's explicit instructions. My mother had forged my signature and taken it. I put the letter back in the box. I closed the lid. I sat with what I knew for about a week, going through my days, doing my work, feeling the information settle into the structure of everything I already understood about my family. It wasn't a shock. It was a confirmation, the final piece of a picture I had been assembling for 23 years. Then I called an attorney. Sandra Osei had been practicing estate and financial law in Portland for 16 years. She was direct and thorough and had a way of listening to a situation without interrupting that I found immediately trustworthy. I laid out the facts in her office, the fund, my grandmother's documentation, the forged signature, the postscript. She asked 3 questions. Then she said, "Do you want to pursue this or do you want to document it?" "What's the difference?" I asked. "Pursuing it means a civil claim, potential criminal referral for forgery, a process that will take 18 months and involve a lot of noise. Documenting it means you build the record, you hold it, and you decide later." She paused. "The statute of limitations on civil fraud in Ohio is 4 years from discovery. You're within the window, but barely. Document it," I said. "For now." She spent 6 weeks building the file. Bank records, signature comparison, my grandmother's original documentation versus the withdrawal authorization. She worked with a forensic document examiner named Dr. Carl Pittman, 24 years in question document examination, certified by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners, who produced a written opinion that the signature on the withdrawal authorization was not consistent with my genuine signature and showed characteristics of simulation. Sandra put the full file in a secured digital folder and gave me access. "When you're ready," she said. I had been not ready for 2 years. Then came the phone call from Margaret. Margaret Walsh had been approached by the Ridgewood Community Development Committee about a keynote speaker for their annual fundraiser. A community development professional with small-town roots, they had specified, someone who could speak to the experience of building something from a modest beginning. Margaret had thought of me before she knew which town. She came to my office on a Wednesday afternoon and said, "There's an event in Ohio. Small town, probably 200 people." Quick pause. "If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I know it's a haul, but it's the right fit for you, and it's good visibility for the firm in the Midwest markets. What do you think?" She slid the event sheet across my desk. I looked at the location, Ridgewood, Ohio. I looked at the committee chair listed at the bottom of the page. Event committee chair, Diane Lawson, my mother. I looked at the date, March 15th. I looked at Margaret. "Yes," I said. "I'll do it." Margaret looked pleased. She started talking about logistics. I nodded at the right moments. Inside, something had gone very still and very clear, the way things go still and clear when a decision has already been made and the mind is just catching up to it. I had one condition, which I mentioned casually as Margaret was leaving. "Can we keep my participation quiet until the day of? I want the introduction to land fresh." Margaret said that was fine. Speakers who preferred not to pre-publicize were common enough. She'd tell the committee chair a speaker had confirmed but not provide a name. "Great," I said. I spent the next 2 weeks finishing a keynote address that I had been delivering in various forms for 3 years and now needed to rebuild from the inside. I did not call ahead. I did not warn anyone. I did not give my family a single chance to prepare, to manage the narrative, to get their version of me into the room before I arrived with mine. I drove into Ridgewood on the afternoon of March 15th in a rented Volvo, which felt appropriately understated. The town looked the way towns look when you've been gone long enough that the changes are invisible. You just see the original version, superimposed on whatever's actually there. The diner on Main Street, the church on the corner where my mother ran the women's ministry and told 40 women I was in a residential facility, the high school where Mrs. Callahan had taught me 10th grade grade English and written in my yearbook, "You think in ways that rooms aren't always ready for. Find the rooms that are." The community center on Maple Street had a banner across the front. "Building tomorrow together." White tablecloths visible through the windows, cars filling the parking lot. I parked. I sat for a moment. I thought about $200 and a bus ticket and a wooden box I wasn't ready to open. I thought about 43 voicemails that said help me and not one that said I'm sorry. I got out of the car. The green room, such as it was, turned out to be a storage room off the main hall with 2 folding chairs and a mirror propped against a filing cabinet. I arrived 40 minutes early and stayed there, reviewing my notes, until Pastor Thomas Briggs, 17 years at Ridgewood First Baptist, the same church my mother attended, the man who had heard her tell the women's ministry about my imaginary residential stay and had apparently not questioned it, knocked and introduced himself and said they were ready. Through the storage room door, I could hear the event, the murmur of 200 people, the sound of silverware against plates, the particular acoustic of a room full of people who know each other. I heard my mother's voice once from somewhere near the front, that carrying, practiced warmth she deployed at community events, the voice that had made her a fixture in this town for 30 years. Pastor Briggs returned to the podium. I stood up. He said, "Please welcome Selena Lawson, COO of Hale & Associates, whose work in community development has been recognized in regional Forbes coverage of rising business leaders in the Pacific Northwest." I walked through the door from the storage room to the stage. 200 people were applauding before they could see my face, the automatic response to an introduction, the welcome extended to a name they didn't know. My mother was at the center table, navy dress, pearls, the smile she wore at community events, open, generous, belonging to this town. She saw my face. The smile didn't fall immediately. Smiles trained over 30 years don't fall immediately. What happened instead was subtler, a hollowing, like something behind the expression left while the expression itself took a moment to catch up. Her hands found the edge of the table, not reaching for anything, just holding on. My father's water glass hit the linen, not knocked over, just set down too hard, the reflex of a man whose body had reacted before his mind gave permission. My sister's mouth opened, formed a word, no sound behind it. My brother, near the buffet, looked up from his phone, looked at me, looked at the podium, looked back at me. The sequence repeated twice, as if he was checking that the information was consistent. 200 people stood and applauded. My mother was the only one in the room still sitting. I gave my keynote, 22 minutes, structured exactly the way I structure all my presentations. Data first, narrative second, call to action third. I talked about community development metrics, about what the research shows drives sustainable local economic growth, about the Pacific Northwest case studies that had informed our work at Hale & Associates. And then near the end, I shifted. I hadn't planned the exact words. I had planned the turn. I knew where I was going, but the specific language arrived in the moment, the way the truest things tend to. "I grew up in a small town like this one," I said. "Some of you might remember me." A pause. The room was very still. "I left 7 years ago with $200, a suitcase, and a bus ticket. I was told I was unstable. I was told I needed help. I looked at my notes, not because I needed them, but to give the room a moment. The truth is that the help I needed was distance. Distance from a story that was being told about me that wasn't true. And the years since have been the work of building a true one." I didn't say her name. I didn't look at her table. I didn't have to. The whispers started at the table behind my mother's and moved outward through the room like a match catching dry paper. I watched it travel in my peripheral vision, heads turning, the specific lean of people sharing information in a register meant to be quiet and landing, in a silent room, at full volume. "That's Diane's daughter. The one she said was she's the keynote speaker. She's a COO. Didn't Diane say she was?" Mrs. Callahan was at a table to the right, 10th grade English, the yearbook inscription. She pressed her hand over her mouth and I saw her eyes go bright and I had to look back at my notes for a genuine second because that was the one that almost undid me. I finished the speech. The applause was long. I stepped off the stage. My mother was at my side within 90 seconds, which told me everything about how she had spent those 90 seconds. Calculating, moving, deploying. She came through the crowd with the smile back on, the good version, the one designed to be witnessed. She opened her arms. "Selena, sweetheart." What a surprise. The voice pitched for the surrounding tables. We had no idea. I didn't step into it. The arms stayed open for 2 seconds, long enough for the people watching to register that I hadn't moved. Then they came down. "You had my number, Mom," I said, quietly, just the two of us, functionally, even with people close enough to hear. 7 years. The smile fractured. "You embarrassed this family," she said. The warmth had left the voice entirely. What was underneath it was something harder and smaller, the voice she used at home when no one from church was listening. "I didn't name anyone," I said. "I told my own story. If people drew their own conclusions, that's not something I'm responsible for." I straightened my blazer. I looked at Pastor Briggs near the podium and nodded. A professional acknowledgement, end of the event. And I walked toward the exit, not fast. Not the way I had walked out of Thanksgiving 7 years ago, the slightly too quick pace of someone escaping, steady and even, the walk of a woman who has somewhere to be and knows exactly where that is. Behind me, 200 people who had spent 7 years with my mother's version of me were now sitting in the same room as mine. The door opened. The March air was cold and clear. I kept walking. The 43 voicemails had come before the event. The day my sister had Googled my name for the first time, the day the Forbes regional feature had surfaced, the day my family had discovered discovered from a search engine that the person they had spent 7 years describing as unstable was running a company with 120 employees. Help me in my mother's voice. Help me in my sister's voice. Help me in my brother's voice, which I almost didn't recognize because I hadn't heard it in 7 years and it had gotten older. Selena, call me back. This is your father. We need my father, who had stared at the carpet at Thanksgiving, who had said nothing for 7 years, who was now calling at 11:30 p.m. because the narrative had stopped working and he needed me to help repair it. After the event, there were 9 more voicemails, different in register, shaken. The specific quality of voices that have just been in a room where something happened that cannot be undone. I listened to all 9 on the drive back to the hotel. Then I called Sandra Osi. I'm ready, I said. I'll file the civil claim Monday, she said. Yes, I said. I pulled into the hotel parking lot, turned off the car, sat in the quiet for a moment. Through the windshield, the lights of Ridgewood, Ohio, the town where I had grown up and been told who I was by people who needed me to be a particular thing. The town where tonight, 200 people had heard a different story and were now deciding what to do with it. I thought about my grandmother. Don't hold this family together at the cost of yourself. You don't owe anyone your life. I had not held it together. I had let it fall and walked through the pieces and kept going. And somewhere in Ohio, 43 voicemails were waiting for an answer that was not going to arrive as a rescue. 6 months later, the civil fraud claim was filed as Sandra had promised the Monday after the event. The process is ongoing. These things move slowly, and Sandra had prepared me for that, and I had accepted it with the patience of someone who had already been waiting 7 years. Dr. Pittman's forensic opinion is part of the filing. The bank records are part of the filing. My grandmother's letter is part of the filing. My mother hired an attorney in Columbus. The attorney sent a letter to Sandra's office in April offering to settle. Sandra called me. What do you want? She asked. I thought about that. The money, I said, with interest, and a written acknowledgement. Of what, specifically? That the signature was forged, I said. That the account was not hers to access. I don't need an apology. I just need the record to reflect what happened. Negotiations are ongoing. Margaret Walsh sent me a message the week after the Ridgewood event. I heard the speech landed well. Also, I got 3 new client inquiries from that region. Well done. I replied, Ridgewood is a complicated town for me. I'll tell you about it sometime. She replied, I have time whenever you do. Mrs. Callahan wrote to me through the Hale & Associates website contact form, a short message. She said she had thought about me for 7 years and had not known what to do with the story she'd been told, and that seeing me on that stage had answered a question she'd been unable to ask. She said my grandmother would have been proud. I read that message twice. Then I printed it and put it in the wooden box.